There is a sentence that has quietly cost more wealth than bad investments, poor decisions, and financial mistakes combined. It doesn't sound dangerous. It sounds responsible. It sounds like someone being thoughtful and careful before making a move. It sounds, frankly, like wisdom. And that's exactly what makes it the most expensive thing most people ever say about their money. The sentence isn't, "I don't care about my finances." The people who say that are at least being honest about where they stand. The sentence that does the real damage sounds completely different. It sounds like planning. It sounds like intention. And it keeps millions of people financially frozen for years, sometimes decades, while they wait for a moment that was never coming in the first place. My name is Ted. If you've ever caught yourself saying you'll get serious about money once a specific thing happens first, this video is going to show you exactly what that sentence has already cost you and what it will cost you for every year you keep saying it. Hit subscribe and give this a thumbs up. Let's get into it. Okay, first, let's talk about what financial waiting actually looks like, because it rarely feels like avoidance. It almost always feels like preparation. Here's the thing. When most people delay taking action on their finances, they don't think of themselves as someone who is putting it off. They think of themselves as someone who is being strategic, waiting until the timing is right, building the right foundation before they start. And the sentence they use to describe that position always begins the same way. I'll start when? I'll start when I'm earning a bit more. I'll start when this credit card is paid off. I'll start when the market stops being so unpredictable. I'll start when the kids are through school. I'll start when things at work settle down. I'll start when I have a proper cushion saved up first. Every single one of those sentences sounds reasonable, and every single one of them is a version of the same thing, a condition that must be met before action is permitted. And here's what most people don't realize. The condition almost never gets met, and even when it does, it gets immediately replaced by another one. Let's look at the math. And let's look at what delay actually costs in numbers that are hard to argue with. Take two people, both 28 years old, same income. Person A starts directing $300 a month toward their financial future at 28. Person B says they'll start at 33, just 5 years later, once things are a bit more settled. Same $300 a month, same direction, just a 5-year gap in the start date. By the time both people reach 65, the difference in outcome is approximately $175,000. Not because person B did anything wrong, not because they made bad decisions, just because they waited 5 years to begin. 5 years of "I'll start when" cost them $175,000 at the finish line. Now run that to a 10-year delay. Person B starts at 38 instead of 28. Same $300 a month. Same everything. The gap at 65 is now over $300,000. The waiting didn't feel like losing $300,000. It felt like being responsible and measured and preparing properly. But the outcome is the same as if the money had been taken directly. And this is where it gets really important. The cost of delay isn't front-loaded. You don't feel it in the year you're waiting. You feel it at the end, as a gap between where you are and where you could have been. Which is exactly why it's so easy to keep waiting. The damage is invisible until it's irreversible. Here's the insight most people miss. Financial waiting isn't a neutral position. Waiting has a price. Every year you delay is a year of potential growth that doesn't happen and can never be recovered. You cannot go back and claim the years you waited. You can only start from wherever you are now. And the longer you wait, the more ground you have already permanently surrendered. So if waiting is the trap, what are the specific forms it takes? 3 things, and each one has its own internal logic that makes it feel justified right up until you run the numbers. The first is the income threshold. This is the most common version. I'll start when I earn a bit more, when I hit a certain salary, when I get the next raise. The thinking behind it feels sound. More income means more to work with, which means a better foundation to start from. But here's what most people don't realize. The income threshold moves. Every time you approach it, it adjusts upward. When you were earning $40,000, you told yourself you'd start at $50,000. When you reached $50,000, the number became $60,000. The threshold isn't a real line. It's a psychological moving target designed by your own brain to keep the decision permanently deferred. And the income level you're waiting for will never feel like enough, because the feeling of enough isn't attached to a number. It's attached to a decision. The second is the condition threshold. This version says, I'll start once this specific thing is resolved. The debt is cleared, the situation at work stabilizes, the renovation is finished, the kids are through a certain stage. These conditions feel like legitimate prerequisites, and sometimes they are. But more often, they function as placeholders, because the moment one condition resolves, another one surfaces to take its place. The human mind is remarkably skilled at generating new conditions. It's when the old ones expire, not out of bad faith, but because starting feels uncertain. And uncertainty is uncomfortable, and the brain will keep producing reasons to wait for as long as you allow it to. The third is the timing threshold. This one sounds the most sophisticated. I'll start once the economy settles, once the market corrects, once things are less volatile. The implication is that there exists a specific future moment where conditions will be optimal, calm, clear, low risk, and that waiting for that moment is the smart move. But here's the thing. That moment has never existed consistently in the history of financial markets. There has always been uncertainty. There has always been volatility. There has always been a reason to wait if you were looking for one. The people who built real financial security didn't find a perfect window. They started in imperfect conditions and stayed consistent anyway. Let me give you a simple way to think about the whole thing. Imagine a farmer who decides not to plant this season because the weather forecast looks uncertain. He'll wait until conditions are more predictable. Next season, there's a drought warning. He waits again. The season after, prices are low. Better to wait for them to recover. He never plants. His neighbor plants every season regardless. Some harvests are poor. Some are excellent. But the crops accumulate. After 20 years, the neighbor has a farm. The first farmer has a very well-reasoned explanation for why he hasn't started yet. Financial waiting is not planting because the forecast is uncertain. The forecast is always uncertain. That was never the variable that mattered. Here's what it comes down to. The "I'll start when" sentence is not a plan. It's a pause that doesn't have an end date. And the longer it runs, the more it costs. Not in a way you feel today, but in a gap you'll have to reckon with later. The conditions you're waiting for are not coming. They were never the actual requirement. The actual requirement was the decision to start. So if you want to stop paying the price of waiting, here's the realistic approach. First, name the condition. Write down exactly what you're waiting for. Put it in a sentence, because most financial waiting lives in a vague mental space that never gets examined directly. The moment you write it down, you can ask the real question. Is this a genuine prerequisite, or is this the income threshold that moves every time I approach it? Second, calculate what one more year of waiting costs you specifically, not in a general sense, in your specific numbers, your income, your realistic starting amount, your timeline. Run the delay calculation, because the cost of waiting is abstract until you quantify it. Once you see the number, the waiting stops feeling like preparation and starts feeling like what it actually is. Third, start with whatever is available right now, not the amount you'll have when the condition is met, the amount that exists today. Because the version of you that starts with $50 a month is not behind the version of you that starts with $500 a month. The version of you that starts today is ahead of every version of you that keeps waiting. The amount is adjustable. The start date is not. Because here's the truth, most people figure out too late. Nobody looks back at the years they waited and thinks the waiting was worth it. Nobody reaches 65 and says they're glad they held off until conditions were better. What they see is the gap, the distance between where they are and where they would have been if they had started the year they first told themselves they would. That gap has a number, and the number is always larger than they expected. The best time to start was the last time you said you would. The second best time is right now. If this made you think about a threshold you've been waiting on, hit subscribe and leave a thumbs up. And I want to ask you honestly, what is the condition you've been using to delay getting started? Drop it in the comments. Because the answers people share are almost always the same 5 things, and seeing them written down has a way of making them easier to finally let go of. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.